Hello, hunters, and welcome back to the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction. Ah. Why don't I have a spear? Aloha, nerds, and welcome back to the Salawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. I am very happy to say I've continued watching Primal. I've watched the first 3 episodes so far of season 2. For those who don't know, Genndy, Jen, Jenny, Jammy, Joni, Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal on Adult Swim is a fantastic animated show. 2D animation, really love the style. The artistic style that goes back to Samurai Jack and the Star Wars, the Clone Wars 2D miniseries that bridged Attack of the Clones and um, Revenge of the Sith back in the day. I really love this art style, and I really love the impeccable storytelling of Genndy Tartakovsky and his company. I've got to say, season 2 picks up right where season 1 left off. So spoilers, mega spoilers for season 1. Primal takes place in sort of the dawn of man ages, but also it has both dinosaurs and mammoths and that kind of time period. We're seeing T-Rexes and Velociraptors and ancient witches and wizards and all kinds of strange stuff that would exist in sort of the primal stages of human existence, where man is just beginning to form societies and discover the world and sort of take their place in it. But they're still fighting against. It's kind of like Flintstones, but very, very serious. Or sort of a pre-Flintstone. Before the Flintstones civilization even existed, this is what happened. These are the guys who invented the wheel. And essentially, for those who have always wanted to see a Neanderthal man team up with a dinosaur, like that kind of childhood kid fantasy, that's what this show is. You see Spear, who's the main character, this buff Conan looking dude, this pre-Conan looking guy. He's probably like great grandfather of Conan. You see he has a family, and they get attacked by dinosaurs and eaten. And also you see this T-Rex that also has its own little family that also gets attacked by dinosaurs and eaten. And through and they're both of their families are killed by the same dinosaur. And as both the T-Rex, I guess his name is Fang, and Spear, as both of them are hunting that dinosaur, they end up kind of teaming up in this unlikely sort of brotherhood to get revenge against that dinosaur. And once they get their revenge, they're sort of on this lonely adventure together, as they're both sort of dealing with loss and kind of developing a friendship across multiple different adventures. I gotta say, I watched Primal in the classic way I always watch things, where I caught it halfway through the season, so I really had no idea what was going on. But then there was an episode that actually kind of backfilled further information than what was in the first episode. And so that getting that information very quickly in the second half actually made it so that I could really follow and understand what was going on. And the beautiful thing is that this is all silent storytelling, that this is all visual storytelling, no dialogue. And one of the things I talk about on this show, and that will be a feature when I return to Why It's Great, is storytelling through action. And what that means is there's a misconception among most people There's always misconceptions among most people. That's what most people are here for, to misconceive things. Uh, there's a misconception amongst most people that action scenes are just there to excite you and titillate you, and that's about the extent of the need. It's sort of a spectacle for the sake of. And you see films by like filmmakers like Michael Bay, and that's definitely the case, where the action is not serving the character as much as it's just there to be like, wow. Even a lot of martial arts movies, while they may have character, may get sort of lost in the action, and you're kind of just watching fantastic choreography as opposed to watching what is the story being told through the action. The action scenes do exist as a part of a way to tell the story. Like just everything I've said so far about season 1. The families of both Spear, the human, and Fang, the dinosaur, getting attacked is an action scene, because you're watching that one lone survivor try to take on this giant beast, and it's an action scene. There's violence, there's ridiculous throws and choreography. Even though it's 2D animation, there's choreography. But what comes at the end of the action scene is a consequence. So the violence has a consequence, and this is a true philosophy of any sincere action movie filmmaker, is that violence has consequences, as it would in the real world. What you might think in your head might be cool to get in a fight, that has a consequence, be it emotional or physical or both. And in this case, we have the very initial action scenes of this show are violent, bloody ones that end with our heroes both being alone and missing their families. And then the very next action sequence is them getting revenge and then becoming buddies. So the action sequence has a consequence, is that the first 2 action sequences leave our heroes in solitude, and the next 2 action sequences bring our heroes together as friends. So we see, there's this line in The Matrix Reloaded, which I did not appreciate as much as a 13-year-old. You don't truly know someone until you fight them. And that's a very true statement. Because you don't know who you're dealing with until you're in such an intense situation that's how you figure out who they are. And essentially, in Primal, you realize that both Spear and Fang, neither one of these is the type of person that would just attack someone for no reason. They have a reason for doing what they do. In this case, they value their families. If they're attacking anything, it's for food. Just basically for food. And the particular dinosaur that went after both their families, you kind of got kind of a sickness out of this thing. It was kind of just, it appeared to be wild. But what we find out, again, spoiler alert, what we find out is that the dinosaur that attacked both of their families was just the child of an even bigger dinosaur, and that becomes a huge action sequence by itself. But then throughout that first season, we get many, many action scenes that are ultimately developing our 2 heroes as friends. And that was what the crux of season 1 really is that they kind of, it's an uneasy, it's not like a set friendship when they first bond. It's just kind of like, oh, we're both chasing this guy. I guess we don't need to attack each other, I guess. And then as they encounter more scenarios, I think one of the best episodes is when Fang, the T-Rex, gets attacked by a whole bunch of dinosaurs, and he's essentially left wounded on the beach, and there's a swarm of pterodactyls that want to pick him to death. And Spear, realizing this guy is, they've kind of looked out for each other up until this point, realizes he can't live another day allowing this guy to die. He's kind of become his family. So he does everything he can to fight off the pterodactyls, and then builds like a little trench in the beach in order to tuck the dinosaur away until the waves crash in, and he can just wait for Mother Nature to help get rid of the pterodactyls. Something like that happens, or he builds like a gigantic like skiff to put him on, which he drags him out of there. But either way, like that's every single action scene builds the character or reveals something about the character, and that's what action scenes are there for. If you look at the movie Unleashed, when we Jet Li in the movie Unleashed is this basically a prisoner, and but he's been trained since childhood to do extreme violence upon people. But the way he was trained is that he has this collar on, and essentially this British gangster takes him around to these underground matches and puts him into this pit. And when he puts him in the pit, he takes the collar off, and the collar removal, Unleashed, basically gives Jet Li both the permission and the order that he is meant to whoop ass until death, until either he dies or the other person dies. And he's so vicious, no matter what his opponent is, he wins. And part of the major crux of that story is that he gets lost due to some infighting between thugs, and he escapes, and he has this conflict within himself of he doesn't really want to fight. He doesn't really want to kill someone, even if the collar is taken off. But when he escapes, he comes into the company of Morgan Freeman, who's taking care of his sort of surrogate daughter, this little blonde girl with braces, little studious chick. And they're so innocent and sweet and delightful. They take him into their home and ultimately take off the collar, and immediately Jet Li is terrified. He's like, that means I have to kill you. But when they take it off and everyone's calm and he does not immediately attack them, he realizes that he does in fact have a choice. And so a lot of that movie is about the choice of whether or not to get in an action scene. But the action in that movie is a part of his character. That's a part of him. How he uses his violence is sort of the most crucial part of that movie. And does he have a choice? And so the action is not there just to be spectacle. It's there to tell you the story of this guy who is making a choice of what he does with his life. Or even if you look at the Matrix, like the very first action sequences, when we're seeing Trinity get chased by the agents, and the agents are out to kill her, but she's just trying to escape. It's not that she wouldn't want to kill them, but she's trying to escape. So that tells you right off the bat that there's an oppressive force, and there's someone who's trying to get away, who's probably, maybe it's a morally gray person, she's committed some crimes, but there's certainly a sense that whoever's chasing her is definitely responsible for a larger crime. It's got that espionage feel, it's got that whistleblower feel, and yet at the same time we reveal during that first Trinity versus Agents chase that she's leaping over buildings, so superpowers are involved, where the action establishes the world and the universe, but also establishes the kind of conflict. And then going back to even Star Wars, the visual, the very first visual of A New Hope in 1970, whatever, we're seeing this massive ship chase down a tiny little ship, which again is a visual of oppressor versus the oppressed. So the visual storytelling and the action sequence is telling you something without verbally saying it to you. Very much in the way that you in real life can experience things with other people, and you can kind of just figure out what's going on. You get a new job and you go into a workplace, and one guy keeps telling you to do things, and every time you do them, the boss gets mad. And then another guy tells you to do something, and every time you do that thing, the boss is happy, and you realize, oh, this guy's sabotaging me on the left, but the guy on the right is actually trying to steer me the correct path. And you just kind of figure that out as you go, and that's what proper film storytelling is. And that's what is all of Primal, because there's no dialogue to sit there and tell you what's going on, because it is the pre-speech age of man. And what's exciting, now we can get into season 2. Now that I've broken you into season 1 and spoiled that thing for you. Well, actually, I didn't fully spoil it. So final spoilers for season 1. Season 1 ends with the introduction of a new character. And she does have a name, and she does speak. And she's She's shaved bald. She's very skinny. She's got tattoos on her body that, the meaning is unclear. But what's crazy is that she speaks. And she identifies herself as Mira. And it becomes this kind of interesting, subtle love story between Spear and Mira as they both kind of look. Again, action scenes ensue and they all look out for each other. He sees the first human he's seen since his family was killed, and so he's protecting her. And she sees him get wounded protecting her, and that motivates her to use her skills. And you realize that she's a bit of an herbalist and a bit of a healer, and does what she can to heal his wounds and take care of him. And so, again, the action scene has consequences that move the story forward. The guys from South Park talk about this. That's, the reason I made this show and the reason I make this podcast is to talk about what the filmmakers talk about, what the filmmakers go for. And what the South Park guys say is that bad storytelling is this happens and then this happens. And good storytelling is this happens because this happens, and because this happened, therefore this happened. Essentially, one thing leads to the next thing. Or you could say it's action and consequence. You could say whatever you want, but either way, the story is built up from an incident that motivates the next incident. Sort of, like dominoes, right? One knocks over the other. It's not just a domino falls and then another domino falls and then, okay, so dominoes all apart from each other are falling. Okay, that's weird. There's a consistent through line to why things are occurring, and it's all laid out in a particular way. And that is what storytelling through action is all about. Is that the action scene creates a consequence that then motivates the character's story. And even the action sequence itself is a part of that story, because how the characters fight each other tells you about A, what is their value, and B, what is their goal. So, getting right into season 2 now. Well, actually, okay, final spoiler for season 1. Mira gets kidnapped after a whole episode of bonding and tender romantic suggestion. Mira gets kidnapped and taken away on a boat across the sea. And so going into season 2, we got our heroes trying to cross the sea. And what I love about it is that they tell the story as the things would occur that are required to tell the story. What I hate about a lot of writing in movies and TV today is the excessive amount of conveniences and gibberish of people running their mouths just to kind of keep things happening on screen. If you need to run dialogue just to keep things happening on the screen, then you are not doing your job. What I like is that, again, these guys, this is pre-civilization, certainly for Spear and Fang. So they have no idea what the heck a boat is, but they see a boat carry Mira away across the sea. And the first thing that Spear thinks is to jump into the water and start swimming. Baby spider. So the first thing that Spear thinks, starting with season 2, is to jump into the water and start swimming. And it is hilariously unsuccessful. I like when the T-Rex just is sometimes like a dog, and it just kind of watches going, "What the heck are you doing, human?" And then the waves throw him back onto the beach. And then he kind of figures out after a few minutes, like, okay, wait, she was on this thing that was made of wood that floated across the water. So he just goes and starts losing his temper and starts breaking trees down with his bare hands. And then the T-Rex realizes what he's doing and starts also breaking trees down with his bare hands. And the T-Rex sees Spear putting all the broken tree trunks next to each other. And so the T-Rex starts putting them all next to each other in completely the wrong way. But at least the T-Rex understands that there's some kind of thought process going on. So again, action through storytelling, storytelling through action. Wait. So again, storytelling through action. The action tells the story. It's visual. You can tell that both characters are figuring out what's going on. Their expressions and their physical actions tell you about their goal and their value. And that the T-Rex at this point is gung-ho. He's like, whatever this dude's doing, I'm doing. Like, we've literally looked out for each other for who knows how long fighting off beasts. So whatever. That's my bro. I'm going to do it. And they get across the sea, and it's one wild-ass adventure. I'm not going to spoil this for you, but the first episode is very satisfying in terms of giving us more adventure that we didn't see in season 1, but still kind of maintaining the relationship because they're no longer struggling to be friends. They just are friends. And so it's cool to have one episode that just kind of establishes where they're both at, that they're both kind of like bonded like this. And it's just like, bro, we got to survive. Yeah, bro, I know. Okay. And so the simplicity of that is a very nice form of storytelling where they still care about each other. So you get some emotional content out of it, but you're not just sitting there going like, well, what's this about? No, it's just purely about survival. And then when we get to episode 2, they're back on land. They're encountering whole new characters. What I love about episode 2 is that it expands the world established by season 1. So there are more humans. Mira is just the start of many more humans that these two are to experience and be around. And I really like that when we meet these new humans, what we get in episode 2 is the building of new friendships. Again, through action sequences. One of the things that I'm just going to spoil a little bit for episode 2 because I don't want to spoil the ending of episode 2 for you. It's a great ending. But episode 2 starts out with both our heroes separated from each other. They both crash land onto the beach on two completely separate parts. So the T-Rex conveniently crashes amongst other dinosaurs, and he finds the little T-Rex buddy. They kind of bond over hunting. And then Spear, the human, ends up with some humans. But when he wakes up, he's covered in mud and all this stuff, and he has no idea what's going on, and his first thought is to run and get out of there, but his arm is broken, so he's running around with his arm flailing around, barely able to do what he fully is capable of doing. But you see just how incredible of a hunter and a battler he is. And part of what makes him stay wild is that he sees this crowd of guys with spears charging at him after he busts out. And so he thinks, "Oh my God, I'm a prisoner. I'm in trouble. I need to get the hell out of here." And so he starts booking it and knocking away everyone in his path. And it's this one other guy who is not directly, he's not part of that crowd and he's not part of the healers, but he seems to be just a guy who generally knows what's going on. And he kind of puts two and two together, and he starts getting involved as well. And it gets to a point where the crowd of guys with spears has our hero cornered, and this other guy, this third party, just jumps in the middle and says, hold up. Like he doesn't know what's going on. He does not know what's going on. We don't know what's wrong with him. Hold up. And he doesn't say that in English, but you understand that he is putting two and two together and trying to get everyone else to figure it out as well, because they have a language and our hero does not have a language. He does not speak English. So this first moment of trust is developed between these two parties because of one guy who kind of understands what's going on. And he offers food and water, and that is what... And after like a good minute and a half of pure tension, the hero eases up, and the crowd, which is part of this community, rests their weapons, and a friendship is made. So again, an action sequence has a consequence that tells the story. And fortunately in this case, it was the prevention of a much worse action sequence. Because I think even our third party guy who just kind of knew what was going on and intervened, I think even he probably realized, even if we get this guy, he's probably going to take out half our little town. because he's ruthless. Even with one broken arm, he has smashed the faces of like 5 or 6 different people, and understandably, the town is upset. But the town just doesn't understand that he doesn't know what's going on because he's not one of them. He's completely away from their culture, and is just scared and doesn't know what the heck is going on. And seeing a whole crowd of people come at him with weapons is obviously not going to make him think, oh, well, these people. Because when he first escapes from being covered in mud and all that, he stops and he sees just people being peaceful and people with babies, and he's like, "Am I okay? Should I not have done that?" And then when he sees the crowd of people with spears, that's what makes him panic and freak out and go right back to raged fear mode. And so again, storytelling through action is that we did get a moment where he could have figured it out by himself, but because of the instantaneous fear, anger reaction of the community itself, that the moment was never allowed to occur, and back to the violence and back to the fear of more violence, which in its own way is maybe a message for people, like, hey, stop going straight to violence. It's like, let's slow things down and figure out what's going on first. That could be a very, very important moral for society. Listen to that, society. Listen. But then getting into episode 3, our T-Rex and our hero human are reunited, and they go off continuing their quest looking for Mira. And I'm not going to spoil whether or not they find her or not, but I gotta say episode 3 is a calmer, cooler episode where we get into more world building. We see some cave paintings. We see our hero sort of seeing this, and the title of episode 3 is The Dawn of Man. And so it's cool seeing him kind of see the story of man and its development as he looks at the cave paintings and walks around and sees all these identical markers of a society that was beginning, and he's just putting the story together visually in his head as to what happened and what could be happening out there. And I just love it. I love the conclusion of each of the episodes, that every episode has what's called emotional content. And what is emotional content? I'm not sure if I've brought this up on my show before, but again, we're talking about action, storytelling through action, right? The movie, the film Enter the Dragon, starring Bruce Lee. That movie starts off with some philosophical conversations about what the purpose of martial arts is, and sort of a way of looking at life, which is what philosophy is in the first place. And the reason that movie starts off with that is because Bruce Lee wouldn't do the movie unless it did. That part of his problem with martial arts movies, and especially American-related martial arts movies, is that it was all spectacle, it was all what he would call exhibition, but it really did not do the function of what martial arts is about. And this is indicated in a scene where Bruce Lee is teaching one of his students, and his student does a move, and Bruce Lee goes, okay, what is this, an exhibition? And he's just basically saying, hit me. Hit me. And the student does a move, does not hit Bruce Lee one bit. And Bruce Lee's like, you need emotional content. Like, you can't just do the move or try to be stylish. You need to have emotional content. There must be some part of you that's inside of you making the move. And as soon as the student understands what he's saying, the student starts having some drive to his move, and he actually starts kind of getting closer and closer to Bruce Lee. But one of the things he does, the student doesn't even understand right away. Like, the second time he does it, he strikes with a kind of fury. And Bruce Lee stops him there and says, it's not about anger, it's about emotional content. And this value is the value that keeps Bruce Lee in in victory for the entirety of the movie, because you see every other character do the things that he was telling the student not to do, and every time those characters did those falsities, those wrong choices, it ended in their death. And Bruce Lee wins essentially by being the calmest and the most focused, but also still using emotional content to accomplish his goal. And you can even extend the emotional content notion again to storytelling through action. Whereas part of the crux of the movie is that Bruce Lee is called out to this competition, this martial arts competition, where, you know, because of his skill level, they expect him to make it at least close to the end. And all he needs to do is take some photographs of some underground things that the government thinks are happening that are involved with drugs and human trafficking. He just needs to sneak in, get some photos, and basically give the government the go-ahead, saying, this stuff is here, here's the evidence, go bust this bad guy who's running this tournament. But that's the plot, right? That's the sort of the physical reason the action is occurring. But that's not the emotional content. Because after he's given this mission, his master, his own master, tells him, I never told you what happened to your sister, did I? And it's sort of revealed that his sister had died prior to this movie beginning. But then we go into this flashback where the henchman, the main henchman of the guy running the tournament, had actually chased and attempted to rape his sister, and the sister killed herself to get away from him. And knowing this, Bruce Lee had a personal motivation for being there. That and how would he actually react? Because when he sees the guy who essentially led to the sister's death, now there is anger. Now there is fury within him. But still, when he battles that guy, he controls himself. And that is the difference between him and the other guy. Because in that battle, the guy gets angry because he can't lay a finger on Bruce Lee. And he could have just lost the battle. But then he tries, but when Bruce Lee knocks him over and it's clear that he has lost the battle, he tries to pull a knife and go for, and stab Bruce Lee in the back. And Bruce Lee turns around, takes him down one last time, and we get the famous head stomping moment where we know he stomps him in the head. But as he does the motion, we cut to Bruce Lee's face as he goes, because he realizes that this was all this pent-up, suppressed emotion that he was just kind of working through finally came out and sort of getting revenge for his sister. And that expression is not just, wow, dramatic face because I did something dramatic. It's because that's his expression of all the pain that he was holding in while trying to just do the job he was assigned. And that's what storytelling through action is, that even him doing the move had an emotional consequence on him. That he was just like, Jesus, like, I got my revenge. Like, my sister hopefully can rest in peace now. But all that pain comes out of his choice. All that pain comes out of that stomp. But again, it would have never happened. He would have never killed that guy if the guy had not tried to kill him. So every action has a consequence and shows you the values. The bad guy had basically no values of any kind. But Bruce Lee is full of values and philosophy, and Bruce Lee would rather not kill you. But if you take him to that place, that is where he will go. And ultimately, the ending with him versus the villain is fantastic, because the villain is a master in his own right. And so the villain, the main villain of the movie, is the only one who can actually lay a hand on Bruce Lee. But again, Bruce Lee's own master gives him the knowledge and the tools to handle the other master. So it's awesome. So with all that being in mind, that lens is what I'm judging Primal on. Because to me, it makes no difference whether it's an animated show on Adult Swim, or whether it's a TV show on Netflix. The visual storytelling rules always apply. And say they talk about sound design as 50% of the movie. Even the sound design is part of telling that story. When you're hearing the violent cries of our hero as he loses his family, or when you hear the angry crowd that's coming for our hero because he doesn't know what's going on, you're still experiencing the story through a sense that essentially is giving you what you need to know about what's going on. And it gives you both the physical plot and the emotional consequence. And that is the interplay that storytelling through action is there for. And Primal is all storytelling through action. It's like a constant Bruce Lee scream. But it's as a TV show about a man and his pet dinosaur, or his best friend dinosaur. Because really, T-Rexes were man's original best friend. Yeah, that's or at least every child knows when he or she grows up watching both Transformers and Jurassic Park. You're like, but wouldn't it be great if, like, I was all tough and cool and I had a pet T-Rex and we just ran around messing stuff up? I mean, that's the whole fantasy of Terminator 2, that you get the ultimate killer as your best pal who's just hanging out with you and going on adventures with you. And so that's what the T-Rex represents. The T-Rex is the original Terminator. And why would you not want that as your best buddy, going off on adventures, catching food? Oh, and one more spoiler for episode 2. There's a great little sequence where the T-Rex, when he befriends another T-Rex, they have a little moment from The Good Dinosaur. I don't know if you've seen The Good Dinosaur, but there's another story of a dinosaur and a human teaming up. And they find some berries, or they find some fruits hanging off of a tree, and both Rexes start eating the fruits. And you see the fruits essentially make them drunk. And they're just like, and they're all hopping around all goofy. And that is one of the most adorable, funny things I've ever seen. So Primal is both violently primal, but it's also just, it's got plenty of great, adorable moments and just sweet storytelling that you could only get from a story with these circumstances in it. And so with that high praise in mind, please, if you like animation, if you like a little bit of violence, but you also want to know that that violence is not just there for the sake of being there, that it is part of the story, Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal. We're talking about season 2 now. You gotta check it out. I know I mostly talked about season 1 and other movies, but that's because that's the way, the connections that happen in my brain that tell me that this is doing things right. I have to tell you that that's what it's doing. So with that being said, thank you for watching. Remember, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment, because I'm just doing this to get the crazy voices out of my head. Oh, that makes me sound genuinely crazy. Let's just pretend I didn't laugh. The crazy voices out of my head. Maybe I just have Bruce Lee in my head.